Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host of the Leader Without podcast. Tonight, I have a very special guest for you, my new good friend, Terri Adams-Munn. She comes from an amazing, lovely, I hope I said correctly, Toowoomba, a lovely town near Brisbane in Australia. We connected 2, 3 weeks ago on the Serving Circle, an amazing community by another awesome Australian guy, Tyson Sharp. It's all about bringing together people that are, for helping and serving others. And tonight I have the pleasure of speaking with Terri. I had an awesome conversation with her. Well, she's an incredible human being, not only as a human being, but also she's lovely. She's very easy to talk to. We were laughing just before that, just having an awesome conversation even a week ago. She's doing something amazing. She's a founder at 10,000 Dreams, where she helps people to reconnect with their dreams, working with them through a process of change so they can achieve their broad picture vision. Basically, what that means, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is that she's helping people to embrace their dreams so that they can live a more fulfilling life, which is absolutely fantastic. We're going to talk about that. Terri, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Honor is all mine. So before we start, for people who don't know you, who's Terri?
Mm-hmm. Who am I? So I am first and foremost, amongst everything else, I'm a wife and a mother. I've been married for 20 years. I've got kids who are 18 and 15 now. Sorry, 15-year-old just had a birthday a couple of days ago.
Oh, wow, happy birthday.
yeah. Happy lockdown birthday. Man, I gotta love what the pivots that happen with our current life. But anyway, that's okay. So I started 10,000 Dreams about 3 years ago, and really, when I explain that, it explains really a lot of who I am as a human being. Mm-hmm. So it began because I had the honor of being at home with our kids for about 15 years as primarily a stay-at-home parent. And it was something that, like, my husband and I, when we decided to have kids, we wanted one of us to be at home, and I was the one who was lucky enough to do that. I didn't just stay at home though. Like, I was the one who would run the fundraisers at the PNC for the school, or I always had a part-time job. I usually also had a micro business on the side. So I've done a bunch of things from make jewelry to plait leather belts. I've bred dogs. I've been involved in network marketing. I've done a bunch of different things because I just needed something as a professional outlet. But while I was focused on raising our kids, I kind of actively pushed away like really big business related opportunities because I wanted to focus on our children. Mm-hmm. When our youngest got to the point where it was, he was in primary school, and I was starting to kind of like pull back a little bit as a mum so that he could, just grow forwards as every kid does. My husband and I had a couple of discussions, and he's like, well, we've got it covered with how we had set up our life at the time. We could continue to survive and keep living the way that we were on his income. He wanted me to get into something that I really was very passionate about when I started either my own business or got into a job, which was lovely. And I'm very, very grateful that was our situation. But when I then went to go and look for what it was that I wanted, so much had changed about me as a human in that process of having kids and devoting so much of my life to them, that all the dreams not all the dreams, but most of the dreams that I had had prior to were now almost irrelevant because I had changed so much, and what I wanted out of my life had changed. So then I went looking for help. I worked with a bunch of different coaches, and I found some phenomenal humans that I could work with, and I learned a lot of amazing things, but I could never find somebody who was willing to really dig deeply into the emotional and family related stuff as well as the business related stuff. I found, great coaches who would do business only, or then there was your counselors, psychologists, or whatever that were working in the emotional family related side only. But there were very few people who would mesh across the all of that. And for me as a business owner, separating my business from the rest of my life is impossible. It's just, it's a part of who I am as a human. And so through this process, I guess a little adjunct to that is that, prior to this, I'd grown up in an entrepreneurial family. I've been involved in business since the day I drew breath. I just didn't realize kind of how much I'd absorbed about business in the life that I'd led. And it got to a point where about a little over 3 years ago, I was sitting having a conversation with a friend of mine. I had just been to a workshop and was sharing the information with her because she owned a hairdressing salon, and her salon was open at the time of the workshop. And we had this big catch up, but we had a whole day that was basically free. So we ended up sitting and talking for 3 hours. And it was an amazing conversation we had. We just went into so much stuff about what was happening with her family, what was happening with her business. You know, I shared about the workshop content and all this other sort of stuff. And through that conversation, she literally turned to me and said, Terri, will you be my business coach? I've gotten more out of this conversation with you today than I had out of my existing business coach in the last 3 months. Wow. And I'm like, sure. Like, it was one of the scariest words I actually ever had to say in my whole life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But literally from there, you know, it was that conversation and a few other things that kind of made me realize that this space of helping people to work out how they want to live first, and then how they're going to use their business or their life, what they need to modify within their existing life to get from where they are now to where they want to be. You know, it was that conversation and others that helped me realize that this is something that I can do and help. You know, I do it really well, and I help other people massively with it. And so from there, the business was born.
You know, beautiful. That just brought a question to my mind while we're talking. So, from your experience, would you say it's easier to be a business coach for someone that we know or for someone that we don't know?
I honestly think it doesn't really matter, because in terms of it, what it comes down to is the person who and their receptiveness. That's what makes it easy or difficult. If it's someone that I know, so there's a couple of caveats to that, I guess. I have worked with people who would ring me up and we would have all these different conversations and whatever, and as friends. And then when it got to the point where I'm like, this is draining me, this needs to become a professional relationship, they didn't cope with that when I started to actually ask for money for the services that I was providing and the help that I was giving them, even though these people knew that this is exactly the space that my business operates within. So it's more about the attitude of the person rather than whether they are, whether I know them or not. You know, I've had people who I've worked with who I had never spoken to before they became a client, and who have been amazing to work with. And I've also had some people come on board who, again, didn't know them beforehand and have been really challenging, but it comes down to their receptiveness, whether or not they are. Some people, you know, you offer them a suggestion, and obviously it's their choice as to whether or not they run with it. But a lot of people will just, you know, you offer a suggestion onto how they can improve something, and they'll just knock it down straight away because they're not in that space of being ready to change.
Totally,
so that's
totally.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the business part and all that, I want to ask some fun question, because as I told you last time, I like to share. We're going to talk about the professional achievement and the title of the person. What I'm most interested in is to look under the hood, so to speak, to see what's in the heart of the person. So I'm going to ask you some heart-to-heart questions. So because I want to mostly know who's Terri at a personal level, because one thing that we all have to keep in mind, regardless of what business we may be in, whether we're e-commerce, coaches, or even selling ice cream and hot dogs down the street, first and foremost, we're in a people's business. People love doing business with people they can connect, they relate, and like. So that's why I want to ask you some question to get to know you at a personal level. So Terri, what makes you happy?
Time with my friends and my family. A really good coffee. I love good lattes.
So latte, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy a good latte. And so, yeah. I love a beautiful, clear sunrise.
Oh, yeah.
I love being able to, we live in a part of just near Toowoomba, in a spot where we've got an amazing view, and to be able to sit up, we've got a little spot up the back of so I'm actually pointing up the direction of where this actual land is, but there's a place up the back of our of our land where I'd like to build what will be our dream home. And we have a space that we've flattened there so that we can go up there and have picnics, and to go up there and have a picnic and watch the shadows dance across the valley out to the northeast, while we enjoy what my family and I call sunset food, so like an antipasto platter. with a glass of wine with my
Oh,
husband
yeah.
is one of the best things in the world. Um,
Amazing.
having said that, I also love to snowboard. So, which is a bit of a challenge in
Really?
Queensland. Yeah.
Where do you go? I don't think Australia can do that.
No, there's good, like fairly decent snow down south in Australia. So down towards
Really?
Melbourne.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I haven't been on a snowboard for a really, really long time.
Come
But
to
it is
Canada.
something that I love. I'd love to. The last place, so I have snowboarded in Australia since I came home, but the last place where I spent any volume of snowboarding was when I was in Santa Fe. So I spent a season before I met my husband working in the Santa Fe ski area, and then I bought a combi van and spent 6 months on the road around North America. But that's in Santa Fe is where I did a lot of my snowboarding, and it was just amazing. I love it. I love that sensation of it's like flying but on the ground.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Tree runs are my jam. I'm not a catch and air kind of person, but I do love this. I do love snowboarding.
Absolutely amazing. What makes you smile?
Seeing other people achieve. My goodness, I tell you, like I was talking to a lady who's coming on board as a client just the other day, and she has gone from a business where she was making $30,000 a year, year in, year out, and has changed to address a need that she saw in the market that related to her family. And in the last 12 months, she had a $200,000 tax bill.
Whoa.
Just her tax bill.
So she might make over 1 million.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. Obviously, there's some management issues to have a $200,000 tax bill. But I am so excited to see that she has gone from like she has completely turned world, her own world around, And it just, man, it makes me so proud. I have had nothing to do with this. She's coming on board as a new client now.
Wow.
So, my role is to help her kind of get into that mindset shift of this is not going to vanish, because she's taken so much. She ended up with a really big tax bill because she just banked everything. She wouldn't, take advantage of the systems that are there. So anyway, that's another really big conversation. But to see people achieve like that, man, that just makes me so excited. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that. What makes you come alive?
Being able to have these kinds of conversations.
I love that.
But being able to get to know somebody, to learn about like all the, you have a look at this, like this, to use that same person that I was speaking about, to look at her, nothing has changed. And I had no clue that I met her, I don't know her, haven't known her well, but I met her for the first time about 18 months ago. And nothing has sort of significantly changed. What she posts about on Facebook hasn't really changed. Like the way she presents herself to the world hasn't changed. But in behind that, there's this massive success story. And it's so phenomenal to be able to learn about that. And then to know that, we're going to be working together so that we can help her to kind of shift things so that she can then have an even greater impact. I think that's just amazing.
Oh, absolutely. What makes you sad and angry? Injustice.
People jumping to conclusions. Those who are it makes me really sad to see people who I can see phenomenal potential within and they stop themselves, whatever reason. I had a situation with a family member that came up just yesterday where this massive opportunity was given to them, and they have listened to some people who probably don't deserve the level of influence that they've been given, but she's listened to them and has pushed away an opportunity based on my understanding of, I know that there's a level of fear within that, but then there's also this buying into what I know is incorrect information. And it's just, and it frustrates me no end, and I'm like, but they have no understanding of the implications of that moving forwards.
Sure, absolutely. When you see someone with potential and they're doing something that is incorrect, but when you try to give them the right answer, they're not receptive to it. It can be painful to watch. I know. I've
Yeah.
seen that happen.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is that we've all got to walk our own journey. You know, we need
Mhm.
to, but to be able to, like, one of the key things is to be able to learn from other people's mistakes instead of just working through and creating them all ourselves, you know. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, this, anyway, we'll wait and see what comes about. But that sort of
Hopefully,
stuff,
yeah.
it hurts my
Mhm.
heart to see people who are
Oh,
not,
sure.
who are buying into the rubbish, and who are then, because of that, not achieving to their own individual potential.
Yes, I understand. Yeah. What scares you?
Snakes. I hate snakes.
Oh yeah, you guys have a lot of them down there, eh?
Oh, we do. We've got 9 out of the 10 most poisonous snakes in the world, and they're all
Oh,
in this
that's
state.
it. Not enough. Should have 12 out of 10. You know.
No, we got. I think actually, I think we have number 11 as well. But anyway,
Do you get visits
yeah,
in the backyard or sometime inside the house when you leave the doors open sometimes? Or at
not
night,
in
they just
this house,
squeeze
but in
in?
the previous house. We
Mhm.
in our last house we lived in, we were there for 15 years. We had 3 snakes in our house in 15 years.
Oh, wow.
Two of them were very poisonous ones. One was a harmless python, but
Oh,
still,
wow.
it's a snake. I don't even like looking at pictures of snakes. If I see one in a magazine, I just flick the page really quickly. I hate them.
A harmless python. Isn't that an oxymoron?
No, pythons choke things. So
Ah,
I'm like a python, even if it wrapped, we don't have those really big pythons. Like they're like, you know, maybe 6 or 8 foot long is as big as they get, but they're not like your anacondas. Like, you know,
oh, yeah.
they're not going to kill a human being. They'll do some damage if they decide to try and get you. But yeah, no, but a python chokes. They wrap around. They don't bite.
Oh, wow.
The dangerous snakes are the ones. Well, the ones that I really fear are the ones that have venom when they bite you that can kill you.
Wow.
So, of the 3 snakes that we had in our house, yeah, 2 of them were eastern browns, which are in the top 10 of the most poisonous snakes in the world, and one was a green tree snake. So that's the python.
So let me guess now you have a sign in your backyard that says snakes not welcome.
Yeah,
I'll
I
go
wish.
next door.
We moved from that house about 4 years ago, and I haven't actually seen a snake in this. Our neighbours have, but we haven't had a snake on our place that I've seen in the 4 years. So touch wood.
Wow.
I'm happy
Oh,
for
yeah.
that one. I'm very impressed. We've got lots of
Awesome.
spiders, but not very many snakes at this place, so I can cope with that quite easily.
Awesome. What would you say is your personal superpower?
Being a cheerleader for others.
Oh yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah. Encouraging others to be able to help them understand just exactly how amazing they are, and to encourage them when they, you know, we all in that process of change, we all come up against a terror barrier of some sort, you know, like a challenge that's going to potentially stop us in our path. And one of my superpowers is helping people to understand that this is how you can get beyond it, or helping people to reframe it, or to, you know, see things a little bit differently. But also to help people understand that, you know, like some of the assumptions that they operate on are just not valid. One of the ladies who is a friend of mine up in Toowoomba has a medical condition, and so she can't drive. And she's a foodie, right? So she has a licensed kitchen, and she cooks meals in her home can sell them. So she, like, literally, it's like an alternative to takeout basically, but it's a really healthy, you know, made with love kind of alternative. And she was saying to me, oh, you know, people aren't going to want to buy my stuff because I don't drive. I'm like, there's Uber, there's taxis, there's plenty of people who do drive, you know, like, and we had this really in-depth conversation probably 12 months ago. It must be a bit more than that, actually, because before this beautiful virus started influencing our lives so much. And her business has completely turned around. She's now starting to have to knock back bookings because she's so busy. Whereas before she was like, but I can only do home-based meals. I'm like, no, you can do catering, you can do all sorts of things. It's just that you need some help with the transport. But anyone who works with you that knows you will help you, because that's what people do in this area. Like Toowoomba may be a city, but it's really just a country town that grew. Everybody's, you know, I haven't met anybody up there who doesn't have a generous heart and who wouldn't, you know, offer some transport alternative to this lady if they wanted her to cater for their event. So,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, those limiting beliefs, it really pains my heart as well. Like, for example, I'm trying to help someone. I'm just like you. I'm a cheerleader for others, but they do not believe in themselves. And whatever,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what you tell them, they say, no, that's not possible for me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the most frustrating. So when you meet someone like that, what do you do? Do you just let them be? Maybe they're not ready at that time and come back to them at a later time, or do you just keep on persisting until? So what do you do in that case?
It depends on the individual and how. There are some people who are coming from that mindset space and who actually kind of want to stay there because they're not ready for
Mm,
the change. It's a bit too scary, and that's okay. It's not my job to make people change. My job is to help people to change who want the change.
absolutely.
So it'll depend on who it is, and like I was saying before, that whole thing about if you've got someone who's receptive, then absolutely I will support them. If there's someone who I've got a long history with, then absolutely I'll support them because that's, the longevity of our friendship deserves that.
Totally.
Um, but having said that, if I meet someone who's super negative and, you offer them a suggestion and they just cut you down and cut you down and cut you down, then I don't need to like kind of help that person almost against their will. My job is to help the people who want the help. So it depends. But if you've got someone who you think is actually going to be receptive, the biggest thing I will turn around and go, but why do you think that is? If this has succeeded for this person down the road, why can't it work for you? What is it that makes you so special that it cannot work for you? Like I always try to ask people those questions so that it will challenge, get them to question their own belief system.
Absolutely.
Because the biggest thing is that we need to think differently. We need to think about how it is that we want to live and then go from there. And so many people will just make the assumption. I often talk about I want people to live their life by design, not by default. Because
Love that.
when you live in default mode, you just take whatever's given to you and you accept it as the status quo and this is what I've got and I can't change it. But what I want people to do is go, okay, how do I want to live? Once I know that, then I'll design the life that I want that will then create, like I'll design the business that I want. I'll design the friendships that I want. And the thing is that all of this stuff, it's stuff that I've already done for myself. I'm not taking this from some theoretical standpoint. There's certainly more things that I am designing to bring into my world, but the world that I live in right now is so different to what I was living 6 or 8 years ago. I think it was 7 or 8 years ago that I was on antidepressants because I hated my life so much, right? And that is certainly not who I am now because I've done the work to change my own thought patterns, I don't like the word mindset because it implies that everything's fixed. It's not. But that whole, it's that whole your perspective on the world. We have the power to change our thoughts. We have the power to choose how we respond to something. Once you exercise that power and question your thoughts and challenge those belief systems, you may come back to sitting with that same belief, but if you don't challenge them in the first place, how do you know that they're truly your own?
Absolutely. Wow. Amazing. I agree with you on everything. Let me ask you now a couple of fun questions regarding when you were a kid. When we were kids, people always ask us whether it's family, friends, teachers. So, Terri, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer back then when you were, say, in
Oh,
primary school or
man.
middle school?
So here's the thing, right? You know how my business is called 10,000 Dreams? It's because I think I had
Yeah.
10,000 answers to that
Oh,
question.
wow. Depending on the day, your
So
mood and all that. Yeah.
I grew up in a cattle family. My family still breed cattle.
Mm-hmm.
And I always expected that I would live on the land and end up marrying a farmer or a grazier or, I just expected to live that rural life my entire life. And so when I was a kid, lots of people told me that I should be a teacher. And I'm like, I never, ever wanted to be in a classroom. I thought the idea of that to me was really restrictive. And I didn't want that. I didn't want that kind of predictability of I'm going to be in a classroom 9 to 3, Monday to Friday, plus I've got lesson plans and assessments. And I just didn't want that for my life. So some of the things that were on my list, I was going to be a vet at one point. I was going to be a I wanted to be a stud groom. So I wanted to, you see cattle in a agricultural show that are being led. So the people who handle them, we call them stud grooms. So that's what, like, they're stud cattle, the groom, and they groom the cattle, right? So that was one of the things that was on my list. Oops. I was going to, at one point, I was going to just follow the seasons and be a snowboarder all around the globe. Once I worked out how amazing snowboarding is, and I come back to Australia and met my husband, and the history rewrote itself there.
Sure.
Oh my goodness! The one constant that I always wanted, in amongst everything else, was that I wanted to be a mother. I always wanted to be able to have children. And I'm very, very, very grateful that has been a part of my story. So, yeah.
Lovely.
But other than that, yeah, there's been a million things. I was going to be an executive in some fancy business. I was going to, there was, you name it. I was going to work with, at one point when I was going through my university degree, I wanted to do rehab with kids with physical disabilities. Yeah, there's a million things.
I can imagine. Now,
yeah.
Looking back at your schooling days, what would you say was your favorite subject?
Maths.
Wow. Okay.
I still actually, one of the things I have kept doing since I was, since my kids were little, is I still tutor maths. There's a lovely young bloke who's at one of the boarding schools up in Toowoomba that I go and work with once a week at the moment. So, yeah. But no, maths and science, maths and physics and stuff just made sense to me. So I, help kids who it's a bit of a challenge for. But because honestly, a lot of it comes down to confidence and knowing your times tables. Take care of those two things, and most of the math stuff deals with itself.
Absolutely. And what subject would you say you could not stand?
Biology. I hated it.
Really? You were traumatized by dissecting the frog, I guess? Or maybe dissecting a snake?
It was more about the whole, like, biology was almost like another language, and we spent, when I was in grade 11, I remember we spent an entire semester starting from the whole year was based around going from the bottom of the kind of food chain to the top. And we spent an entire semester, so 6 months worth of learning, just on single cell animals. Like, I think we got to maybe like 3 and 4 cell. Like, it was just, oh my God, ripped my hair out kind of. It was so frustrating. But the funny thing is that then we got into, like, that must have been the first semester, because then we did, like, the different human systems with, like, the digestive system, that sort of stuff later on in the year. But then I went and did a degree in human movement studies. So my entire degree was based around biology. We had anatomy and then functional anatomy that were in our first, they were subjects that we had. And I don't know how I managed to pass them. I did, thankfully. But yeah, it was like skin of my teeth, kind of just happened to fluke the stuff that I studied for those subjects. I did not enjoy them.
I can imagine. Now, looking back at your path, how would you describe your path from your schooling days to now? Would you say, as once you get into one path, it was pretty much straightforward, smooth sailing all the way up until now? Was it like turns and twists and almost like a roller coaster?
It was up and down all over the shop. So I did things like, so when I first finished my degree, when I first finished high school, I went to Malaysia and lived over there for a year on a student exchange.
Wow, where about in Malaysia?
Brisbane. Pardon? Oh, where? I lived in Alor.
Oh, wow. How was it there?
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. I lived with a Tamil family. So I had a host sister. I was 17. I turned 18 while I was over there. I had a host sister who was 14 and another one who was sort of mid-20s. And then there was my host father. So he was a English lecturer at the university. And my older sister worked in a bank, and my younger sister was obviously still at school. Wow. So I lived in Alor for the year with them. It was just such an eye-opener for this little kid from the bush who had no idea. Nobody in my entire family had even been to an Asian country at that time, let alone anything else. So yeah, it was such a phenomenal experience, and I am so grateful now. Like, I've had a couple of Japanese exchange students come and stay with us here, just on short stay programs. But I'm so incredibly grateful for the family who took me in. You know, they committed to having me live in their home for an entire, I think I was there for like 10 and a half months or something. Like,
Are you still
it
in
was a
touch with them?
full year. Yeah, I still, not massively. My host father has passed away.
Okay.
And the younger sister lives in London now with her husband, and the older sister she actually married the man that my older sister was going through an arranged marriage process when I was there, and then she met a man that she fell in love with, and she ended up marrying him, and they are still together, and so she lives in Malaysia with their family now still.
Awesome.
But I haven't been back to Malaysia, and I just have contact with the two sisters. I have a host brother as well, but he was incredibly shy and very rarely spoke with me while I was there, so I have no clue where he is right now.
Oh, wow.
And I've got a couple of friends that I went to school with that I still have some contact with. One of them actually lives here in Australia, so she lives in Melbourne, and we have caught up a couple of times when I've been down there.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Wow. It's always
So
good. Yeah.
yeah, but in terms of like career stuff, so after that I came home, did my degree, then I went to America and worked and did my year across there. So, you know, the time in the ski area, and then on my trip around in my combi van or combi camper. And then I came home here and I worked a collection of different jobs. At one point I had 6 part-time jobs because I couldn't find anything that was full-time. So I was just, you know, juggling and making money wherever I could, kind of thing. And it was only a couple of months after I came back from the US that I met my husband. So I worked in Brisbane for 3 years doing, you know, all these crazy hours with all these different jobs and stuff. And then I decided to go back and work with my dad in our family business on the farm for a couple of years. So I wanted to be a part of that as an adult and understand that as we sort of move forwards, because I still have like small involvement with that family business. So I went home and I worked on the land for 2 years, where I was, you know, mustering cattle and, you know, fencing and farming and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, we bought a block of land when I was there. So I lived on that and kind of managed that. Not particularly well when I look back, but that's what I did.
Awesome.
So yeah, anyway, that was, and then from there, you know, it was after while I was working for my dad, we got married, and then I fell pregnant, and I couldn't work on the land. I couldn't drive down the paddock in a ute, let alone on a quad bike that we used to use most of the time when I was pregnant, because I was like the size of a house. So I moved away from the family business so that I wasn't just, you know, drawing on it and not giving anything back, and moved down towards Brisbane because my husband was working down there full time. And that's when we lived in that, you know, bought that little house that we lived in for 15 years. So,
Awesome.
yeah. And, you know, then we've got the whole, you know, having kids and doing a bunch of different, you know, just entry-level jobs or, you know, micro businesses and that sort of stuff. So I've probably worked in 10 different industries, I'd reckon. I haven't actually sat and tallied it up, but, you know, I've done a lot of different things. But yeah, it's been, I loved it. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Absolutely. I'm about the same. I did a lot of different things, and it's just part of the experience, because this life is all about experimenting different things, just learning. Just like you go to a buffet, you just try to sample a little bit of every dish, you know? That's exactly it.
Absolutely. You can't leave something on the table. You got to try everything.
Absolutely. Totally. Especially when the buffet it's a beautiful buffet with tremendous selection. I mean, it would be a crime to just limit yourself to just one dish, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, I'm sure you heard the saying, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean the story that we keep on telling each other in our head all day long. So when you had to change your story to change your life, how did you do it? Did you do it with the help of friends, family, your husband, mentors? How did you change your story to change your life, or to bring your life to where you want it to be?
So there was a bunch of different things that I did. You know, if we go back to that point where, you know, I was really depressed and was put on medication and stuff to help me with that. The day that I remember being in the doctor's surgery with my husband, and, you know, the doctor suggested antidepressants, and I just hated the idea. To me, it felt like a cop out. And she just looked at me and she said, If you had a broken leg and I gave you some crutches, you'd think nothing of it. So right now you've just got some broken thought processes and you need some medication to help you get through that. But it's only a short, like she said, it will either be a short-term thing or a long-term thing, depending on what you do as a person from here. And I'm like, okay, well, for me, like I just decided right then and there, it was going to be short-term. I was not going to be stuck on this stuff forever. And so I took it, and it took me a really long time to be willing to even have this discussion with people, because for me at that point, there was a lot of, I have always put myself under like really massively high expectations. And I was really ashamed of the fact that I had gotten to the point where I needed antidepressants to help me get through. But what we did out of that was, though, that I booked in to see a psychologist immediately. And man, I tell you, that lady worked for her money when I sat in those conversations with her. We did. I got really deep, really quick, and we just, did the work that I had been avoiding doing for a really long time, because I knew stuff needed to change. I knew there were some things I needed to change in my life, but the biggest thing was I needed to change the way that I thought about what was going on. And so we spent a lot of time unpacking stuff. And then the lady went and retired on me. So anyway, and I wish her well in her retirement. She absolutely did.
Did you scare away?
I know. Like we were just getting into the really good stuff, and she retired. So then I started working with a couple of other, I tried working with a couple of other psychs, and they just didn't hit the mark. One guy in particular was, oh my goodness, I think if I'd actually done what he said, I would have done more.
You can put that on your resume. You can put on your resume and say, I retired someone. I'll put it in one of your marketing logos. I'm the lady that you better do what I do. Otherwise, I'm going to make sure. Do you want to be retired? Do you next to be retired?
It was anyway, look, like I said, the lady was amazing, and I'm very grateful for the time I had with her. But she'd been, anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess kind of too, the thing is, though, that if I had continued to work with her, if she hadn't retired at that time, and then because what it did to me was that once I did all that really great foundational work with her, and then went and tried to work with a couple of other psychs who I didn't mesh with as well, it made me take responsibility for the fact that I needed to implement and instigate this change myself, rather than rely on someone else to kind of guide me through that process. So then I started looking for some coaches, and I worked with a lady who's based in Brisbane, who does a Bob Proctor program. So she's one of his, she coaches directly with Bob Proctor. Mm-hmm. So working with her was really amazing. And that was very much just around the thought processes. It's about thinking, like the program is called Thinking into Results, because it's literally all about analyzing your thought processes and challenging those existing paradigms to go all, like even the whole thing about being a stay-at-home mother and then pushing away the career opportunities because otherwise I couldn't be the parent that I wanted. Well, I look at that now and I go, if I was a parent now, touch wood, I don't want to be. I've had my kids. I don't want any more. But if I was to have another, no, baby, I don't need 3 babies. I'm more than happy to take care of other people's babies. I'm still a very plucky human being. I love babies.
Retired in that area. Okay.
That's done. I've actually got a workshop coming up in a couple of weeks, and one of the ladies who's coming along has got a little baby who's breastfeeding. So obviously he'll be there in the room with us, and I'm like, yes, I get to have cuddles while I do workshop, So yeah, I'm one of those crazy people that likes to take other people's babies and settle them down and stuff.
Hey, it's the craziest people. The crazy, they're the most fun people to hang out with. We have the proof here.
Yeah. You've got to make your own fun.
Exactly.
But yeah, so. I look at that paradigm now of, to be a good parent, I needed to not have a taxing job. I'm like, that's not necessarily the truth these days, So anyway, it is what it is. But I knew that I needed to do that work. So, I've worked with, like I said, a bunch of different coaches, and I still work with different coaches. Whether that's in and around mindset, maybe it's around some of the work is more around things like marketing. I've always got someone that I'm working with in some capacity, and at the moment I've got a couple, like there's actually 2 or 3 different people that I'm learning from, where I'm invested in learning from their different programs so that I can become a better business owner and become a better person.
Speaking of that, that's a perfect segue. Speaking of mentors, do you have any tips for people who are looking for mentors? I mean, How do you find a real mentor that is legit? Because there's a lot of self-proclaimed fake gurus out there. So, and by mentor, I don't mean someone that's a billionaire, because that person will not be, you know, we will not be able to relate with them, and they will not be able to relate with us. So, if someone is looking for a mentor that is maybe a couple of steps ahead of them, so they can really relate with them, do you have any tips on how to find a mentor that is legit?
I think there's two things that are really, really important. There's a lot of factors that come into deciding on a mentor, but I think the two most important factors are, first of all, you've got to find somebody who has the life that you want to create for yourself. Now, they won't necessarily have created that through the same path that you are following for yourself, but if they have, if they've got the runs on the board and they have created a life that has, whether it's like, it depends on the results that you're looking for. If you're chasing financial results, but you're not overly worried about relationships, then that's going to be very different to somebody who wants to have that sort of more balanced and successful life at the same time. So you need to find someone, first of all, you need to work out what it is that you want to get to. So that whole thing about, you know, where I said before, you want to define that broad picture vision. You want to know how it is that you want to live, because if you don't know those results that you're chasing, you're not going to be able to find the help that you need that's actually going to get you to that endpoint, because you don't know what the endpoint is, right? So yeah, it's very important to find someone who's got the runs on the board that you want, first of all, and then you need to, the other thing is that you need to find someone, I believe, whose personality that you gel with well, because you will have, in my experience, you'll have better quality conversations. There's a lady who I am currently working with who when I first started with her, I thought that we were a really good match. And as we've continued to work, I realized that we're probably not quite as good a match in terms of that personality side of things. Results side, absolutely, she's doing great guns, and that's why I continue to work with her, is because of the results side of things. It depends though on what's important to you as an individual. You've got to be really clear on who you are and who it is that you want to work with. You know, are you happy with someone who, you know, will bend the rules a little bit, or is that whole, you know, ethics and honesty stuff super duper important to you and an absolute no-brainer? You know, like this. There's a million different questions that you should ask yourself, I think, in that process. But the key things, I think, are someone who's got the results that you want and someone who you mesh with so that you can have better quality conversations.
Absolutely. These are the two most important questions to ask, that's for sure. Now, let me ask you about something you're passionate about, your business. Tell us about your business and what you do. Tell us about the 10,000 Dreams.
Okay. So 10,000 Dreams is about helping people to get really, really engaged in that broad picture vision, that how you want to live. So there's a whole sort of process that I have built up to help people with that. So what happens with when people decide that they want to work with me is the first thing they'll do is a dream board workshop. So I run these both online and offline. I'm actually doing a hybrid event this month for the first time ever. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, but, you know, people can teleconference, so I'm sure we can do a hybrid workshop. I just haven't personally run one before yet. So anyway, but the whole goal with that is, so that workshop is a collection of different tools and tricks that I have learned that I have then put into my own system. And it's something that is really very, very effective for people who want to get clarity on what it is that you want to create with your world. So that's the first step. And then from there, if people, you know, some people will take that and go away with the, excuse me, will go away with the dream board and be completely happy with that. And that's fantastic, you know, so long as they have gotten that additional level of clarity that they're seeking at the time. Excuse me a second.
No worries.
From there, though, for people who want a little bit more help, then I do also one-on-one coaching. So that will, how big or how long that takes will depend on the individual, depends on how clear they are. If they come in and they just need a little bit of tweaking, then, you know, it'll be a fairly short package. And if they're super like foggy on what they're actually trying to create in their world, it's going to take a longer period of time. But that's very much guided by the needs of the client. I'm not going to sit here and go, we will do this. You know, my work is very individualized. For those who have then done some of the one-on-one work but want the continued support, I offer what I call the 10K Mastermind. So that's a small group, again, maximum of 4 business owners in a committed group, minimum of 12 weeks together, where we get online and we spend time. I do a small coaching piece, and then we do a spotlight on each individual business in every session, so that you can get really clear on, what it is that you're doing with your business, and also have a sounding board within that little micro community of the mastermind, so that when you've got a challenge that comes up, you can get help faster, because you don't have to go through and explain all the details, because we already know it from being a part of that group. Because if you think about, Barbara Sherder did this amazing TEDx talk about the fact that when you know what your dreams are and you're really clear on it, we're also going to know that there's some barriers for us to actually get to those dreams. And so for us to be able to get beyond those barriers, we need to be able to share that with enough people, because somebody with, if you have a really big network of friends and acquaintances and you share that barrier, somebody will be able to help you get beyond that, right? So the mastermind is the first step in that, helping people to get beyond that. And the other thing that I do is I run networking events. And again, this is what started with my networking events, was a way of kind of helping people to get to understand me and get to know me, has become a part of this process of, once you're clear on what your dreams are and you know what those barriers are, you then need to be able to share that with enough people to be able to, get past the barriers. So networking events are a perfect opportunity to be able to expand your network, get to know other people and other businesses, and see whether or not you can help each other to get beyond those existing barriers, whether it's just having somebody to have a conversation with. Maybe you need someone to just drop an idea into the thought processes, or maybe it's someone who will become your next client, or you become their client. It doesn't really matter, but it's all about that whole, sharing what it is that we need, so that we can then help each other.
Love that.
So yeah.
What would you say is your ideal client?
Someone who's ready for change. Usually I end up working with mums who have, like myself, who've stepped back from their career or their job or whatever, to be able to focus on having their children and spending the time with the kids that they want. And then who are stepping forwards again, and who are at that point where they're really frustrated. They don't know, they know that they want something that's different, but they're struggling to actually identify what their new reality looks like. Maybe it's that they know what they want, but there's other challenges in the way, with perhaps a family dynamic, or, the needs of the kids, or, there's always something. There's a frustration there because of a barrier that they haven't been able to get past. And so, it's those people who are wanting to move forwards. Often, my clients are people who are moving from being an employee and into an entrepreneur. So starting their own business. They're not necessarily in an existing business, or I had one lady who came and worked with me who had been an employee for a really long time, was really frustrated, wanted to get a business going. And when we got into it, she sort of started to understand exactly what was required to start a business. She actually made the decision to actively step back away from that and go back into the employee role, because that was what she wanted for her own life. She wanted to be able to go to a job, punch a time clock, work really hard, go home, and then have her time as her own, and not have any responsibilities outside of her designated work hours, other than to the people that she loved. And that's fine. Like, I'm completely happy with that, because she has ended up exactly where she wants to be. So she is now living the life that she designed. Originally, it was the life that she ended up with. So it was kind of like that life by default. But she ended up with a life she designed, because she actively went and tried all these other things and went back into the life that she had before, because that's where she was happiest.
Absolutely.
So there's not very many of my clients do that, but that's, it's about people embracing the life that they design and then chasing it in whatever that looks like for them.
Absolutely. What would you say? Can you share with us the example of the most remarkable example of transformation from one of your clients that has gone through your program?
That would nearly have to be my very first client. So this lady, man, it just makes me smile to even think about her. She is so phenomenal. So she's a hairdresser. She had been, when we first met, we were friends, obviously, before having, if you think about the previous parts of the conversation, we had been friends for a couple of years before she came on board as a client. And when I first met her, she was cutting hair in a spare room in her home. And then when her youngest started primary school, and she then took on a salon that was in a fairly kind of remote's not the right word, but it was in a part of town that was like fairly quiet. It was certainly one of the lower socioeconomic parts of town. She had taken on a few different staff members and had been burned really badly by those experiences for different reasons. And so when she started working with me, she was in the process of her final trainee apprentice was finishing up. So once they had finished, she had chosen to not offer them a full-time role after that apprenticeship. And she literally just wanted to be, she basically said to me, she just wanted to be herself in a salon, cutting hair by herself until she dropped. Basically, it was like her plan was just to work by herself for the rest of her career. And then, until she could no longer cut hair. And the thing is that this is a lady who's really good at perms and has a significant senior citizen sort of demographic in her business, as well as she's a hugely talented person, but she just really loves taking care of the older ladies. So they would come in for their perm or their blow dry and set once a week. And there's very few people I don't know about in other parts of the world, but in Australia, there's very few people who still do perming as a part of their business. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so fast forward, 3 years, she has moved her salon to another, right into the middle of town. Her salon is divine. It is it's Pinterest worthy. The whole salon is so incredibly beautiful. Her old one wasn't ugly, but the new one is just next level phenomenal. She has currently got an apprentice who has almost finished her qualifications, who she wants to keep on. She's got another apprentice who has come on board who started full-time with her this year. She's also got a senior staff member that she's working with, a senior hairstylist. So she's got 4 full-time staff members three full-time staff members plus herself within the business. And all of the beauty work that often comes with having a hairdressing salon, so like brow waxing and eyelash tints and that sort of stuff, she hated that stuff. So what she's actually done is set up a space within the new salon. So another lady who was just starting her business has started a beauty business within her physical space that's separate. So anyone who asks for brows and lashes and stuff just get directed to her. So all the stuff that she hates, she's outsourced. All of this skill set that she has, because she's a phenomenal hairdresser, she is now sharing with these 2 people that she's got coming through as apprentices. Her business is booming. She's getting more time off than she's ever done before. She has automated a whole lot of, most of her booking system is now automated. So it's all online. She is just you wouldn't even imagine. She's also in the process lost about 35 kilograms in excess body weight that she was carrying. Right. So
that's the biggest achievement. Wow.
Well, it's phenomenal though. But to see the difference in who she is as a human being now, she's so much happier. She's so much more fulfilled. Her business is doing great guns. She's got a plan for where she wants it to go. She has the capacity within her existing salon now to take it to where she wants it to go. It's just next level amazing. And I love that. We worked together for about 18 months. We keep in contact, obviously, but we don't work actively together now. But to see the fact that, she shifted all that stuff and then has gone on to do so much more. She works with a different business coach now who's much more hairdressing specific than I am. But I love that. I love that she has, she knew that, when our time was done, and she knew who to look for, who could really help her take it to the next level. And she is just, she's got success on her own terms. She's defined what success is to her, and she's living it right now. And I am so proud of her. So proud.
What would you say was the number one thing that you did that completely transformed her and her life?
That she did. She made the choice to change.
That's it.
She made the choice, and then she actively followed through on it. Because if you don't make the choice to change, so we make our choices every single day. Even when you talk about relationships and stuff, people talk about, a marriage dying. Like I said, I've been married for 20 years now. My anniversary was a little over a month ago. you make the choice every single day as to whether or not you're going to actively make your relationship better or whether you're going to kind of neglect it a bit. And that's like what you do is up to you. You're like, there's zero judgment here, but we make that choice every day and then we have to follow through on those choices. And sometimes you make the choice every minute. It doesn't have to be every day. She actively made that choice to change and then she's followed through on that. That's what the difference is for her versus other people who don't get those sorts of results across that time frame.
I agree. So what would you say was why did you, what was holding her back? Because she could have made that choice years ago, but what was it that it was at that time with you that she made that decision to turn things around?
I can't speak for her because I don't really know, right? We never really know what's happening inside someone else's head. But I know that for myself, it got to a point for me where I decided, like, it was like this switch just kind of clicked for me. There was a few different things that happened, but one of the biggest things was that I started to look at like I said before, I had very much devoted my life to what it is that my kids needed. And once my youngest went across into primary school and was, happily at school every day and all the rest of it, I had this, 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock in the afternoon where nobody was calling on me. It was just me at home. And, there's always stuff to do. But I kind of, it was like looking down that gun barrel of, okay, he's now in primary school. Another 12 years' time, he's going to be out of school and he'll be off living his own life. And then what? Because as they go through school with my kids, each year they've been a little bit less reliant on me as a parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still get the odd phone call of, Mum, I left my school lunchbox at home. I'm like, and, this is where you got to get a little bit creative.
Mom,
now,
I need
son.
some
You got to
money.
stand on your own 2 feet. Borrow some money and go to the tuck shop, because I don't send him to school with money usually. He just gets on it. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But you know what I mean? For me, it got to the point where I kind of had this realization that what I was doing now wasn't going to continue to serve me into my future. And it wasn't going to give me the future that I wanted for myself as an individual. So I think my guess is that this lady went through a similar process. Like when we first met and she was still cutting hair in her spare room, she had always said to me that she wanted to open her own salon, but she wasn't really clear on what it is that she actually wanted with the salon. It was just that she was going to open a salon. And so she found literally like the place it had really rubbish parking, but it was really cheap rent. And it was relatively visible, just in a kind of separated part from town. You know what I mean? Like she just took what was kind of the easiest option at the time when she went into that first salon. But it also ticked the boxes that she needed at the time because of, she didn't have significant financial reserves because, she had kids in private school and all these other things that she was choosing to focus on instead. So there's a bunch of those different things that I think certainly I can make assumptions that I think she got to a point where it's like, this is not going to cut it. When we first started working together, she was starting to get frozen shoulder from the hairdressing. So she realized that she, at the time she would have been late 30s, I guess, maybe early 40s. I don't know. I can't remember right now, but we're a similar age. So she's probably early 40s. She kind of realized that, retirement age in Australia is 65. She, at the way that she was operating, she wasn't going to be able to keep on cutting hair until she was 65.
Sure.
She probably can now because of the way that she has rearranged her business and the nature of what she does these days. And also too, the fact that she's done so much to improve her own health. But,
absolutely.
My assumption is that she, just got to this point where it's like, well, I need to make a change. We all get to that at some point. Just some people get there sooner than others, and some people get there more often than others.
Maybe she got to a point that she just couldn't take it anymore. She said, I had it. I have to make the change. We all get to that point at one time. Yeah, I can imagine. Now, let me talk now about, the theme of this podcast is, building impactful businesses. For me, for example, I'm launching a physical product on a crowdfunding platform called Kickstarter in next few weeks. And for each unit I sell, I will be donating a pair of eyeglasses to someone that needs eyeglasses but cannot afford it, because there's over 1 billion people in the world right now that are not even able to do something as basic as seeing clearly. And my own little way, I want to help. Now, Terri, what would you say is a cause that you're personally very passionate in and you're involved right now, or we would like to be involved in the future?
So just recently, I've become involved in a local charity here called Dolly's Dream. So Dolly's Dream was started. There was, I can't even remember. So this was started after a 14-year-old girl took her own life. So her nickname was Dolly, and I feel really bad, but right now I can't even remember what Dolly's proper name is because I never actually met the girl. Dolly's parents, Kate and Tick Everett, took on. So they, after Dolly's passing, they started Dolly's Dream as a way of combating the effects of bullying.
Oh yeah.
And it started through the school system because Dolly was obviously at school when she took her own life. But it has extended also into impacts of bullying within the workplace. Why I decided to take that one on, Dolly and our eldest were a very similar age, and they were both bullied at school. Thankfully, our child didn't take her own life. I'm incredibly grateful for that. There were certainly other challenges that came up as a direct result of the bullying. But the other thing is that I actually went to school with Dolly's mum. So she and I were next door neighbours when we were kids, and we went to the same primary school. I don't think I've actually seen her since primary school. I'm not going to sit here and claim that we were, that we've been best buds or anything else. But the thing is that what I love about what Dolly's Dream is doing is that they are having such a massive impact in the in that space within our country. Kate and Tick, Dolly's parents, live in the Northern Territory, and Dolly was actually at school in Queensland. So she was a boarder, and she actually took her own life when she was at home in the Territory on school holidays, like in the middle of so in Australia we have a 6 or 8 week holiday over Christmas through our summer, and she took her life in January. So it was right in the middle of school holidays. So she was removed, like physically removed from these kids, but I'm assuming that they were like still getting to her through her phone, and so she chose to end her life because of the effects of that, from what we can understand. Pardon?
When did that happen? When did Dolly take her life?
It's a couple of years ago now. Okay. I'd need to go back and have a look. It's got to be at least I'm thinking maybe 2.5 years ago. But I honestly, I have kind of blocked that detail from my brain. I should go and have a look at it again. So it's a relatively recent thing. But anyway, there's a lot of reasons why. So given that, when Kate and I were at school, we were country kids living on the land, and so far removed. My life growing up in the land, we had literally, when I was in primary school, we had a party line phone where you had to, had to ring up the operator and ask for them to connect you to the phone and stuff, right? So we didn't have any of these influence of technology that the teenagers now live with. But I can't imagine being at home and on the land and, being around your horses and your dogs and all the other things that make rural life so amazing, and being so influenced by people who are not there that that you would end up so depressed that you'd take your own life. It just, that in particular really rocked me as a person. Of course, yeah. So yeah, but Kate and Tick have done, they've put recommendations into the Queensland government in relation to bullying and how it's dealt with in schools, and I'm pretty sure it's actually unprecedented, but every single one of their recommendations was accepted by the government. So there's some really phenomenal things that they're doing. They've set up a helpline, and they have there's another business here called Trademutt that they have partnered with. Trademutt creates high vis shirts that are where you look at mining sites and stuff where you've got your bright colors and then the reflective strips on the shirts. We call them high vis shirts. So these guys make a version of high vis shirts that then also have really intense patterns on them. So, and their tagline is, "This is a conversation starter," because Trademutt is all about suicide, particularly of trade-related people, people who are in the mining industries or, carpenters or, all those sorts of people who have to wear high-vis clothing here in Australia. So yeah, Dolly's Dream, Trademutt, they're all doing a lot of this stuff within the mental health space. And I really love what they're doing. And it's something that I think is really, really important. In my personal journey, I never got to the point where I felt like, my life wasn't worth living, but I could very easily see how people could progress from that to there.
It's tragic to see someone so young with so much potential taking her life because of some stupid kids
Yeah,
just bullying you. Yeah, I know. I was even
absolutely.
myself. I was bullied when I was a kid, but thankfully I didn't. I didn't take my life. But I can see that happening, especially now. When you're a kid in middle school and high school, it can be very cruel as an environment.
Mm, mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
That's a that's a,
absolutely.
that's a beautiful cause. Wow. Now
Yeah.
let me ask you now some fun questions to wrap it up. Imagine that you add a time machine and you can go back and sit face to face with your 18-year-old self. Knowing all that you know now, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give to your 18-year-old self?
Um, I don't know. So here's the thing, right? If I gave myself the advice and then took it, my life would be different.
True.
And I don't necessarily want a different life to what I've got right now. So if it didn't change the outcome, it would be something along the lines of just jumping at more opportunities. Because there's certainly opportunities that I've passed up because I was afraid. And I didn't
Mhm.
understand fear and the thought processes enough at the time to realize that the stories that I told myself about why I shouldn't do something or why it wouldn't work was
What
based
were
on
you
fear.
afraid of? Afraid of failure? Afraid of not being
Mm,
capable or good enough? Or what were you
afraid
afraid
of
of?
failure more than most things. Being
Mhm.
of failure, of then being judged for the failure, of because of the nature of the business that my family have built,
Mhm.
within the circle, our family's fairly well known. Um, and to be able to, try and step out and do something and then not have it work, that to me was,
Sure.
I didn't want to deal with that. So, and which is partly too, I guess, like I was 43 before I started this business. I needed that time to, I was 42 when I worked out what I want to be when I grow up, right? It just took me a little while to actually do it, right? But it if I had done this work prior to that and it hadn't actually worked, I don't think I would have coped. I just wouldn't have coped with the whole. I don't know what I would have done, but if
Yeah.
it hadn't actually succeeded, I wouldn't have coped with that whole the
Mhm.
ramifications from that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you
Mm.
have your own podcast?
Not really. And I know we've spoken about this, but I what I do is I interview people once a week on
Mhm.
my Facebook page. I don't actually have a designated podcast. So once a week, I on the first it's every Tuesday. So that's Brisbane time at 10 a.m. I do a on the first Tuesday of the month. I actually present a webinar and I
Mhm.
share some information with people that it has been really useful for me. And every other week, I interview somebody. So at some point, I need to get you on there. Obviously, we just need to set up a time
Sure.
where we can make that
Love
work.
to.
And
I'd love
and
to.
hope well, it won't be quite so late at night for you either with a 10 a.m. start.
Absolutely. 10 a.m. What time is here? We'll have to figure
um,
that out. Okay. So that's
well,
like
we
8
jumped on
p.m.
this call. Yeah,
Was
so
it
we jumped on this call today at 11. So an hour before that.
so 8 o'clock? Yeah, 8 o'clock here. Okay.
Yeah, and we
All
don't
right.
do daylight savings here, so we don't have to worry about changes with my time zone. I don't know whether you guys do daylight savings up there, but
Yes, we
um,
do. We have
yeah. So
summertime and wintertime, but
yeah, yeah.
imagine that next week you have the most amazing, the most special guest in the world, which is yourself. So you're interviewing yourself. What would be the first question you want to ask yourself? I don't want you to think too much. What is the first question that comes to your mind
What's
that
the
you want to
dream
ask
life you
us?
want to create?
And what's your answer?
So my dream life is um, a business where I am helping lots of people. I haven't actually defined exact numbers because it's still one of those things that it's quite a way out there. My business at the moment is relatively small compared to what I want to grow it to.
Hmm.
Um, but it's a dream of my business that is impacting a lot of people. So I've got people who are working with me, taking my workshops into schools, where I'm employing mums who want to be able to be at home with their kids and who can then go into schools during the daytime while their kids are at school to help these other students, but also help their own families. I'm living in my dream house up the back there. I'm having um, a soda water or a glass of wine or whatever I feel like on that afternoon. At about 5 o'clock, the shadows start to really look really amazing across the valley out there. So, 5 o'clock is down tools and enjoy the sunset for a while before we have dinner.
Mhm.
It's being able to travel again, because I love to travel. But one of the things I also really want to be able to do is, most of my family have never seen the snow, and I love the snow. So I want to be able to take my family away for Christmas and have a white Christmas. But I want to be able to pay for my whole family to go. So that's, my dad and his wife and my brothers and
Oh,
their
wow.
families and my mom and her partner, and as well as my husband and my kids, and just take us all somewhere, probably Canada, or it'll either be, well, I haven't actually worked out where yet, because this is still one of those, like, it's the dream, right?
I would
But also
recommend,
too, we've got,
honestly, I'd
yeah,
recommend not Canada, because you being from Australia, the cold, what you consider cold is completely different than what we consider cold. Just
yeah,
to get an idea, next time you go to your kitchen, put your hands in your freezer at -10. Imagine something
yeah,
that's twice, if not three times colder than your freezer. That's winter in Canada. So maybe Italy would be a smoother transition, or maybe even
yeah.
Japan or Korea. But please, and I'm Canadian, I will say keep Canada maybe another time.
I really want to live through a Canadian. Well, I really want to experience a Canadian winter at some point, but I'm thinking possibly somewhere like Colorado, where you've got, because my family haven't traveled. Most of my family haven't been out of the country before, or have only been to other English-speaking countries. So we'd probably go to somewhere like Colorado, because you've got amazing snow, beautiful scenery, but also people who speak at least another version of English, so the communication is easier.
Oh yeah,
So anyway, but yeah,
that's
so it's
lovely.
like a significant business, so I can do amazing things like that, create beautiful memories with my family, celebrate Christmas, because I'm a mad Christmas fiend. I just ran a Christmas in July event a couple of weeks ago. That was a big
Oh
networking event,
yes,
because
yes, yes,
it's
yes.
another excuse to celebrate Christmas.
You know,
um
something that'll be fun
but
for you. Why don't you make Christmas every month? That would be something amazing once a month.
because then it starts to lose its shine. Like, part of
Yeah.
the joy of Christmas is that it's once a year, so we just do Christmas in July because, Australian Christmases are hot, like you don't ever have a hot meal on Christmas Day, because it's the middle of summer, right? It's all
Yeah, yeah.
about cold watermelon and mangoes and
Mm-hmm.
salads and, like really beautiful, fresh,
Soft
like
drinks. Oh yeah.
cool stuff, right? So Christmas in
Mm-hmm.
July is about having that excuse to be able to have like your roast turkey and all those sorts of really lush, rich and sort of
See,
luxurious kinds of foods.
for me, it's the opposite. I can't wait till I can experience like a warm Christmas. I've never experienced that.
Mhm.
It's the
Yeah, because
opposite.
the only Christmas that I've experienced that was cold was when I was in Santa Fe, and it was lovely, but it was just so different. We'd only been in the country for I don't know, maybe a week or so, maybe two at the time. So we were very much fish out of water
Mm-hmm.
in that one.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember being I can't remember whose house I was at. I remember being at somebody's house on Christmas Day, and it was really lovely that they opened it up to us, because we had all worked at the
Mm-hmm.
ski area and then gone to this person's house afterwards. And it was really, I really appreciate it. But there's a lot of detail about that I don't actually remember, because it was a long time ago and all my photos got wrecked, so I don't have them to look back to.
I love talking to you because you're an amazing guest, because you're kind of reading my mind. You're making amazing natural transitions from one part to another. I was about to ask you about what impact you want to have. You just answered that without me even asking you. So now my next question on that is, how do you want to be remembered? What legacy do you want to leave?
I want to, when people remember me, I want them to smile. I want them to
Mm,
feel better about
love that.
themselves because of the interactions that we've had.
Mm,
So, and whether that, for some people that will have been like, maybe that their only interaction is listening to me on this podcast, or maybe they've worked with me as a client, or maybe we've been, really good mates. But I want people to think about me and the conversations that we've had, and to smile, so that they feel
I
better
love
about
that.
who they are and what they're doing in their world.
I love that. Wow, amazing. Now, are you a reader?
Yes, however, I've gotten out of the habit.
Okay, okay.
I
What would
don't
you
read as much now as I used to.
Okay. What would you say as was the book that you read over the past year that has had the biggest impact on you in your life, in your business?
Um, Probably. So I'm a part of a book club, and we've recently gone through the book Think and Grow Rich, and
Oh,
we're
wow.
about to go through it again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a book so it's really interesting. My husband listens to this podcast called The Dollop, and they completely pulled apart the whole concept of Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill. But that's a whole little sideline. But if you're ever interested in the whole like cynical side of things, it's a kind of funny podcast. But anyway,
What is it called?
the Dollop.
Okay. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
check it out.
So they go into historical stuff, and it's very entertaining. But anyway, if you take Think and Grow Rich in the context in which it is intended, in terms of the way it's presented as a book, it is next level phenomenal. One of the most successful people that I know read this same book at least every year, and don't just read it for the sake of, oh, I'm going to tick that box because I read that page. You read it and dissect it, and because every time you go back to it, your thought processes have changed. And so what you get out of the book then changes,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a very, very powerful book.
I agree. It's one of those books that we have to read at least once a year because, as you said perfectly, each time we read it, because we're a different place, we're much more maybe informed or educated, have more experience, we get something new out of it. That's something that we might have missed the first or second time, but the second, when we see it, wow, there's something that we saw before, we say, wow, now I really understand what that really means. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's one of those things. So my goal from here going forwards is to read Think and Grow Rich every year. And then once I've finished going through the book again, then to go back and redo my dream board so that I've got a new, it's that fresh way of looking at things to update my dream board to help me move forwards with creating that dream life.
There's one book that I also like to read once a year that I would add to that list. Is called The Slight Edge by what is his name? But if you look at it, The Slight Edge.
Yeah.
It's a powerful book. It says, whenever we see something massive happen, it didn't happen overnight. It's a small, incremental, repetitive action we take over time that we see the transformation, and we can apply that in every aspect of our lives. So that's a book I would also recommend as well. But Jeff Olson, that's the name, Jeff Olson, Olson. Yeah, amazing book. Now, one last question. What would you say has been the smallest thing that you've done in your life that has had the biggest impact on your life and business?
Making the decision to smile at every single person I met.
Wow, I love that. That's so powerful. Why?
Because there's not enough joy in our world, and the thing is there's not a lot of joy in our world, but there can be. It's simply that we get into, I think what happens is that people get into their own little thing that's going on, and get kind of that me-centric focus happening. And if we turn that focus outwards and offer a smile to people when we meet them, it takes a little bit of our joy and gives it to them. And it might be the only bit of joy that they get for their whole day. But, one of the things I was saying to you earlier before we started recording was, where we drive out from our home, our street then goes on to basically a highway, not super busy, but, it's 2 lanes. And so often we've got to sit there for a little while waiting to get on. And so long as the sun's not blaring straight into my eyes, which it does first thing in the morning, I make sure that I sit there with a big smile on my face as I'm starting my day. Because, I'm always, by the time I get down there, I've always got the red lipstick on so people can see me, they can see the smile. And if nothing else, they've gotten a smile as they're going off on whatever it is that they're doing, and so it's that little bit of joy, because smiles are so contagious. And if we're going to share something with the world, then why not it be a smile? Because it makes someone else feel better, but it also makes yourself feel better, because you get a little endorphin shot. Even if you don't actually feel happy, if you make yourself smile, the happy hormones still kick off in your brain. And that makes such a difference to just everything. You know,
Absolutely.
I went through just recently, I've been nominated for one of the local business excellence awards, which I'm very, very grateful for. But the process of actually filling in that application and getting my submission in was one of the, like, it's so stressful for me because I want it to be perfect, and I know, and I'm worried about being assessed and all this other stuff. You know, there's all this. It's interesting to watch the mental chatter that goes on when I'm going
Oh,
through
yeah.
this process of submitting an application. But to remember to stop and smile and go, oh, I just need to share. I need to think about just telling a judge, one of the people who's going to read this, about my business. Just one. If I can just talk to one person, I'm okay. And if I put a smile on my face as I'm actually doing it, then
There
I
you go.
find it easier to actually to have that written conversation with the judge and to get the work done.
Absolutely.
So
Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that.
yeah.
Wow. Listen, Terry, you're an incredible human being. We can talk for hours, and we've been talking for 2 hours now. We can keep
No,
going on and on. It's amazing. But
thank you.
we gotta wrap this up. We will definitely do a part two in a few weeks, a few months, especially after you add you've add your event. We can and I've had my crowdfunding launch, so we can share and
Mm-hmm.
catch up on that time. But do you have
Would
any
love that.
parting? I would love that too. Do you have any parting tips for anyone listening right now?
I think the biggest tip is that we don't have a look at the life that you're living right now.
Hmm.
If you don't love it, take the time to invest into working out why, and then work out how you can change that. Maybe it's a big shift, maybe it's a small thing, maybe you need help, maybe you can do it yourself. But work it out what it is, because so many of us will spend more time in our life planning a holiday or planning a wedding than we will ever spend planning our life. And then we wonder why
Absolutely.
we end up with a life we don't actually really love. Right? So for those,
Absolutely.
take the time to assess the world that you currently live in and the life you've created for yourself, and then move forwards from there with whatever, and just assess with an open mind. Have a look at
Mhm.
all the different areas and move forwards from there. It's one of the
Absolutely.
things when I run my dream board workshops, it's the very first thing that I get people to do as an activity, is to assess their world in a very simple way, so that you've got a starting point as to, here's where I am right now, what do I do next.
Absolutely. Golden piece of wisdom. And if people want to reach out to you and connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
My most active social media is Facebook. So you can just search for me as Terri Adams-Munn on Facebook. I've got a really
Okay.
open profile because my world is not a secret. Or you can look for my business, which is 10,000 Dreams,
Okay.
just written out in words. But if you put Terri Adams-Munn, my business page is up. My name is on my business page anyway.
Okay.
Or you can email me. So my email is just terri@10,000dreams.com.au, all spelled out in words. Lovely
All right.
long email.
Oh yeah. It's fun. It's gonna be quite a
Yeah.
journey for them to get there.
The things that you learn when you're going into business. I chose the 10,000 Dreams like domain name because that was my business name. I didn't want the 10K, but man, I wish I had the 10K now because it
but
would be
but the
easy to
people
write
that
out.
make it, and write your name correctly, they will be really motivated, They will be really.
Absolutely. And so Terri is spelled Terri.
Hmm. Yes, I will put all that in the show notes. So don't worry, I got you covered. So listen,
That'd
Terry,
be
it's an
great.
absolute honor and pleasure connecting with you, talking with you tonight in this podcast. And before that, even a few days ago when we had a chat before, absolute honor. I'm just grateful to be connecting with these amazing people. And if it wasn't for the podcast, I wouldn't be doing that. So for me, starting the podcast was probably the smallest thing that I've done that has had the biggest impact for me, connecting me
That's
with all these
awesome.
incredible people and putting me in touch. As I told you last time, I've
Mm,
been connected by people of a level that I would have never imagined or dreamed to become to get into the orbit if I was building a business that was just for profit. But it's because I'm building a business with a heart. I'm getting in these people's zone of interest, and they contacting me. So I'm absolutely blown away, and I'm absolutely humbled by that. So, and I'm humbled to be connecting with you and other like-minded people. So I'm blessed for that. Stay safe, stay awesome. I salute you. You're a true leader with a heart. Keep shining
Thank
your
you.
light. Do the best you can do. And yeah, have a wonderful day. For you, it's a day. For me, it's evening here. It's almost 11 p.m. here. For you, it's almost
Yeah.
what? Noon for you, right? It's lunchtime.
No, it's nearly 1 o'clock. It's past
Oh,
one.
okay.
Yep.
All right.
But
Time to.
can I just say thank you
uh,
ever so much for inviting me onto your podcast to begin with.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for the impact that you're creating with
My
as you said,
pleasure.
giving people like myself the platform to be able to share what we do with the world.
My
It's
pleasure.
so it's such a valuable thing, and I really 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 appreciate it, because like I said, I don't have my own podcast. I don't do this as a regular thing. I simply get on and do a Facebook live once a week, but I
That's
really
beautiful. Hmm.
absolutely value what it is that you're doing and the
Thank
opportunity
you.
that you're giving to so many different people.
I deeply
So thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
Your words mean the world to me because I know they come from the heart, and I know you're a true leader with a heart. You're an enlightened soul. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm humbled. I don't know what
Thank
to
you.
say. Maybe I'm not finding the right word to thank you accordingly. But hopefully one day in the future, when the world is open, I can shake your hand and give you a hug the way that I would do with a real friend. Because I consider the people I talk to not just guests on my podcast, but hopefully and eventually real friends. So
I'd love that.
absolutely. So thank you very much, Terry. Have a wonderful, wonderful day and an awesome rest of the week and weekend and so on and so forth. Go make it, go shine and make the biggest impact you can do so you can inspire. Because the whole point of this podcast is not just for you, me and you to chat or share a story, but to inspire others. Because if me and you, we can inspire just one person to
Mm.
to do good with their business, and they inspire another person, then I will feel that my life is meaningful.
Yeah.
That for me, I read a quote a while ago that says, "What is your?" And that question was asked to many people, especially the very influential. Say, "What is your definition of success and happiness?" And one guy, his answer really stood out. Said, "If as a result of me being alive and doing what I'm doing, if one person was able to laugh and breathe easier, then I will feel that my life is complete." And that's something that always is on my back. So if I can make one person happy, smile, and give them, as I said, just like you, I'm a cheerleader for others. If I can make one person believe in themselves, then I'm the happiest person in the world.
Yeah.
So thank
And I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. It's if you can help someone else, then we've made the world a better place, and that's what we're all here for.
absolutely. Listen, we can keep on going. We already did. We
Yeah.
said goodbye like 10 minutes ago. We're still here.
You
All
know,
right.
I'm a chatter. It's a good
Have a
thing.
wonderful day. Thank you very much, Terry. Good night. Take
Thank
care.
you
Bye
so
bye.
much.